And you're very welcome back. So England have got the opening victory, and Didi, in a nutshell, I suppose it was a deserved win for England.
Yeah, I think if you look at the 90 minutes, I think England deserved to win. They had the better chances in the first half. They had a couple in the second half. Croatia passed the ball well for large parts after the first 15 minutes. But I think they've been pretty toothless, to say the least, going forward. And Pickford didn't have a save to make what was thrown at them. They defended really well, but I don't think England's defence needed to be at the best today, because Croatia hardly offered anything going forward. I've got to say, offensively, I was a bit disappointed with them. So overall, I've got to say that because of the first 50 minutes, the chances they created in the first 15-20 minutes, England, I think they deserve to win.
Does that performance suggest, Liam, that England have plenty in the tank and that they should have it relatively easy in Group D?
Yeah, it's a great start for them. You know, they should win the group now. I think Croatia will be the most difficult opponents in the group. I thought they were solid. They were professional, as Kenny said in commentary. Rice and Phillips in front of the back four really did their job. I thought the back four were sound physically. Mings was very, very impressive. Stones didn't do anything wrong. And really all the Croatians had to offer was physicality. They didn't have any skill up front or guile up front. They had good midfield players, but the front players, I think, let them down badly. They didn't have any creativity, any invention to what they brought to the game. And the physical aspect of the English defence coped very well. And as Didi said, Croatia didn't really create a chance. They were reduced to long shots or crosses into the area. There wasn't a lot in the match, Peter, but there was a little moment of Raheem Sterling showing what his pace can do. And Phillips, who I thought was the England man of the match, gave him a very good ball to finish off for the winning goal.
Yeah, so plenty of positives, and possibly not in the areas we expected, because so much hype surrounded all the so-called flair players in this English side. Did we see enough from them this afternoon, did he? No,
only for the first 15-20 minutes, and I think where England showed their immaturity and where they have to improve was when they went 1-0 up. You know, it was about half an hour to go, and they didn't have one goal-scoring opportunity after that. You know, sometimes you've got to keep the ball better. You have to create one or two chances to relieve pressure of your defence, and I think this is where they have to improve. You know, when they go 1-0 up, they do still have the maturity and still have the calmness on the ball to pass it at certain times. And every time they did get the ball, they hoofed it long, and the next Croatian attack came. As I said, it was down to the inability to create chances from Croatia, and defensively, what they had to deal with, they did deal with. But I think in possession, at times they've got to be better. But apart from that, it was a solid start. The first 15-20 minutes, I think they showed what they can do when they're on top of their game. Yeah, I think a lot to look forward. And if you see the options he brought on, Southgate, you know, going forward, I think there's a lot to like about them.
Well, Liam has mentioned the positives. Where do you feel they can improve, particularly in attack?
As I said, under pressure, I think sometimes they've got to be better, because after the first 15 minutes, it was like a different half. You know, after the first 15 minutes, it was all Croatia that didn't show for the ball no more. Mings played 4 or 5 long balls where they got a free kick out of it, but it's easy to defend for the opposition, and they've got so many players who can make the difference, and they just didn't get these players on the ball. So I think that's where they can improve. I think Kane's been very lacklustre. I think that's maybe a slight concern when he was on the ball. Liam mentioned it at half-time. I think he looked a bit laboured. I'm not sure whether he's tired or whether the season took it out of him, but he certainly didn't look like the favourite for the Golden Boot in this tournament today. But apart from that, I don't think there's too many negatives. It was a very professional performance against a decent side that lacked really the guile and the physicality up top.
Yeah, a decent side, Liam, but not as good as we might have expected from Croatia. So are England still untested in some ways?
No, they were tested physically today and tactically. You know, the Croatians, I think they showed the last 20 minutes of the first half that if you switch off, you know, they're going to maybe thread passes through. But I thought Rice, although you didn't see him much, he did his job. He did what was asked of him. And Phillips got lots of tackles in to break attacks up from the Croatians. And the defence didn't really put a foot wrong. I know we highlighted Walker at the break, how poor he was in possession, but actually he did his job really well. And I know there was a bit of controversy about him picking Trippier.
Yeah.
But Trippier did his jobs, you know.
So that decision has been justified,
Oh,
has it?
absolutely, 100%. And that's what I said at the start of the programme, that you've got to give Southgate a bit of trust. He knows these players now. He's been with them a long time. Maybe they weren't brilliant. I think the first 10 minutes we were very excited how they were playing, but it became very tactical after that. But all in all, a real good foundation to qualify first in the group and then go on from there.
Yeah, does it afford Gareth Southgate the opportunity now, having got the 3 points in the bag against probably the most difficult opponent in the group, or possibly, that's what we expected, does it afford him now the opportunity to experiment, not experiment a little bit more, but rotate a little bit more?
Well, I think Southgate is the kind of manager, he look what he's up against and then pick his team accordingly. So he knows that he probably has more of an advantage over the next two teams, so we could see a more attacking side. But I would be worried about Harry Kane. I thought he was very, very poor today. I thought he looked laboured, he looked slow. And perhaps that's why people like Foden and Sterling didn't shine.
And that's an interesting one now, because possibly Kane, one of the few players that didn't really shine for England today. It presents Gareth Southgate with a bit of a conundrum. I mean, can he drop Harry Kane?
No, I don't think he can. He's the captain of that team. I think you've got to carry on with him. You know, you've got to give him the confidence, and you've got to play him full stop. Because if you go further in this tournament, they will go into the knockout stages, and then I think you need Kane's goals. I know Calvert-Lewin came on. He's a willing runner. He's a completely different player to Kane. But I think if you want to go deep in the tournament, I think you need Kane's goals. So I think it's out of the question that he's not going to play the next game. I would be very cautious of making too many changes, because you had a good start against a good side. It gives them a lot of confidence, because the Croatians, they are no easy team to play against. And you've got to take the momentum into the next game now. And yes, we might see one or two changes, but I'd let this team play now, because, you know, confidence and wins breed confidence, and there's nothing more important in football than being confident and having your head and your chest out and looking forward to the next game. I think the tricky thing for Southgate now is to look after the players who didn't play, and especially the ones who didn't even get on the bench, because I thought, before they scored a goal, I thought it was tailor-made for Sancho, because you needed somebody who beats a player and who's good at one-against-one. I know Foden can do it. He didn't really do it after the first 15 minutes. I think it was tailor-made for Sancho. He wasn't even there. So I think he's got to talk a lot to these players now to keep him on board, because there will be a time in this tournament where you might need Chilwell, where you might need Sancho, and these two didn't even get on the bench today. So I think the ones who play, they're all happy now. They'll be buzzing. They'll be going back to the hotel. You know, the work really for the manager is now to speak to the ones who didn't play, maybe expected to play, to really keep him on board for the next few weeks. Liam,
how do you see Southgate utilising the squad?
As I said, I think he'll go against the opposition that he'll sum up, and he'll see who's most suited to play against them. I think he's always been that kind of manager, and it's worked so far. It's worked well for England. It's probably a little bit of nitpicking about Harry Kane, but he did really look laboured, and he didn't bring anybody into the game. You know, you have to have somebody up front who's going to be able to hold on to the ball and get distribution to the likes of Foden, to the likes of Sterling. Just didn't do it. I think we have a clip of him at the end of the analysis showing why I think he is a worry for England.
OK, but one player who did justify his selection was Raheem Sterling. Question marks over him before the tournament because of his recent form, but he got the all-important goal.
Well, he did, yeah, and he has that pace, hasn't he? It's actually, it's a, you know, good England goal. But you would look at the Croatian defending, Peter. They've made a catalogue of errors. First, it's Guardiola sliding in on Phillips, missing the tackle. Then there's another one. Carr misses it. Brozovic lets Sterling go. Don't see it there, but he's let Sterling go. And Croatia doesn't get across quick enough to stop him from putting the ball in the net. Walker made a good pass to begin with, but that's what he's supposed to do when you're a full-back. You're supposed to be good in distribution. He'd been awful. He'd been awful in the first half, so maybe he got told at half-time, come on, you've got to do better when you're on the ball, and he actually did well there. But I thought Phillips was England's best player, both tactically and both how to affect the game. I thought he was England's best player today, and it was a real good ball into Sterling. Bit lucky with the finish, but there was very little in it.
Yeah. Well, he finished with a smile, but I don't think he was overly fond of a number of those questions. But I can tell you, having been there, it's the most difficult job in TV, the after-match interview with the players. But I don't think he was overly impressed with the question, did he justify his selection? Because, of course, the goal justified his selection. But do you think Raheem Sterling, along with Phillips, will be among the players who will be first down on the team sheet ahead of the Scotland game?
Yeah, he got the winner, and Liam said at half-time that Walker never really showed the form he showed at Manchester City for England. I think with Sterling it was the other way around, because he's really been under the radar for the last 6 months. He didn't play well in the Champions League final, but when he turns up for England, he always seems to perform and deliver. And again today was very lively the first 20 minutes. Then I think down to the team having a bit of a dip. You didn't really see him an awful lot, but then he popped up. A great work by Phillips. I have to agree with Liam. You know, I think he was a standout performer. It was an exceptional performance by Phillips. Great ball, and he finished it off. And we know that he's very lethal in front of goal. And overall a very good performance. And I think that the plus side, or a very positive, on a very positive note, I think the performance of Phillips gives you some versatility and flexibility in the middle of the park, because I think when you play Scotland, when you play the Czechs, I think you could potentially play Phillips as a holding midfielder with Mason Mount, and maybe bring one more
Grealish.
Yeah, and bring Grealish into the side. You know, because I think when you play against the other teams lower down the ranks, I don't think you need two holding midfielders. And we've seen Phillips.
It was a cagey selection today, though,
Phillips
by Southgate.
He's not really a holding midfielder. We've seen with the goal that he can do this. But obviously, I think it gives you the option now to play Phillips a bit deeper, maybe take Rice out of the team in 1 or 2 games, play Mount just ahead of Phillips, and then you bring Grealish in the side, which obviously the whole nation.
Yes, that was the big question. How are they going to facilitate Jack Grealish? But that sounds like a decent option for Gareth Southgate, Liam, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, he's a very good player. He's an excellent player. But there's always one thing the press hang their hat on, you know, and this is what's going to be the question. Okay, great win, Gareth, but are you going to play Grealish in the next game? You know, he's going to be constantly asked that. That's the pressure you're under for an England manager. But go back to Sterling, he had a poor season. He kind of fell out with Guardiola. I was very surprised when he was picked in the Champions League final. He didn't really deliver. So that'll do him a power of good. You know, he's always, as Diddy said, usually with assists for England, he's always delivered. So a cagey selection by Gareth Southgate, but when you win 1-0 and you didn't give the Croatians really any serious chances, I think you have to tip your hat to the manager and say, well done.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
start.
Well worth the 3 points. And Liam, in the first half, they created the better chances. Ditto in the second half. They did create the better chances, didn't they?
Yeah, one of them's a free kick, so it doesn't really count. But Mason Mount showed his ability. This was Harry Kane. Now, is he sluggish getting onto that? I don't know. We're going to look at that a bit later. Mason Mount very nearly scored here. This wasn't good by Sterling. It comes down to him, and it's a poor finish. That's what he's been like for Man City pretty much all season. But he got the winning goal, and he justified his selection.
She was obviously listening to our exchanges in studio prior to asking those questions. What about Croatia, Diddy? I mean, what hopes for them of getting out of the group, given going on today's performance?
Well, they play opposition which is not as good as England in the next 2 games. I think that's the biggest positive. I think they showed their experience. I think they showed they're capable of playing good football. But if you want to win games, you've got to score goals, and you've got to threaten the opposition's goal.
Yeah.
and they simply didn't do it. And Liam said England had the better chances. Well, they at least they had chances. You know, this is as good as we've got here. This is 25 yards out. Modric running away from goal. Easy pickings for Pickford. This is a great take here by Brozovic, who's been poor today. And then the ball comes back again, but you've got to say, ball falls to Rebic. He's on his weaker foot, but England defend well because he's got all of a sudden he's got straight away. He's got 3 players coming racing at him. This is off a corner. It was Brozovic's last action. He goes 10 yards wide, and this is probably the best chance. I think he's got a guess here. You just have to speculate what Walker's going to do. I think he's got to make a better effort here to make contact. You know, I think any contact would have probably resulted in a goal. Again, Walker did ever so well to shield the ball between Perisic and the ball. But I think he's got to do better then. Yeah. And the thing I was disappointed with Croatia, because I think in recent years, they never knew when they were beaten. You know, regardless what the score was, you always felt they have a go and they will get a chance or another chance. You know, you always felt the game is not over. Today, after they went 1-0 down, I never felt they're going to score here because they never threatened the goal in the first half, hardly threatened in the second half. And I think that was the disappointing thing for me. And I think that's what the manager will be disappointed about, that they didn't make more of an effort to at least create one goal-scoring opportunity. If you miss it, you miss it. But at least you were there, and they didn't do that. But as I said, they play against opposition which isn't as good as England in the next 2 games, and I firmly believe and think that we will see them in the knockout stages. But whoever they play, I think if they don't play better offensively, I think in a knockout game, I think they could be up against it. Yeah.
OK, well, it's the Czech Republic next for Croatia, and they'll be looking for a significant improvement on today's performance against England. Yeah, they certainly enjoyed it at Wembley this afternoon, and one of the players who impressed you guys most was Calvin Phillips, Didi.
Yeah, it was absolutely outstanding. First major tournament, you know, a lot of responsibility in the middle of the park against some top-class players. You know, Brozovic at Inter Milan, Modric. This is a great contact he's made there with that volley, and this decided the goal. So I think he deserves probably 80% of that goal. Sees space, lets it go, comes inside, and then he's got the composure to see Sterling plays a perfectly weighted pass. Here again, wins the ball, kicks it out because I think Stones was injured, was on the floor, and here he stops Modric. I think the foul was committed earlier. I don't think this is a foul, or should have been given. He puts his foot in. He's a physical player. He's quick. He's very good in possession, very composed. Mightily impressed with him today. And as Liam said before, I think he was England's stand-up performer. And
has he leapfrogged Declan Rice in terms of being the anchor midfielder for England?
Well, if you only play one in the last 2 games, which he might well do, you can't drop him. I think after today's performance, you've got to say that he was the standout performer. Rice, yeah, you didn't see much in that position. Sometimes it's not a good sign when you don't see players because he did his job defensively. But I think Phillips was certainly the more impressive. And after a game like this, I think he's very hard to drop now. So if you were to play with only one in the middle, I'm inclined to say it'll be Phillips.
I don't think he'll change it, Southgate, unless he's chasing a game, Peter, further on in the competition. I don't think he'll drop Declan Rice. Although we didn't see much of him today, I think Southgate will be well pleased with his performance. He shielded that defensive line, and I think they make a good pair. And then he has 4 in front who have the options to do things. You got Mason Mount was quiet today. Foden started well. Sterling was good, and Harry Kane. I think when they go back to the hotel tonight, he'll sit down with his number 2, Steve Holland, and they'll go through the game again. And the only real worry for him would be how laboured Harry Kane was in the 90 minutes or whatever he played, 80 minutes that he played.
Yeah, I mean, both of you spoke about Harry Kane and acknowledged his goal-scoring attributes prior to the match, but other aspects of his game you feel maybe aren't up to the great goal scorers that the game has produced.
Well, not so much the great goal scorers, the world-class players, Peter. You know, they can do things on their own. And I didn't think he had a great World Cup in 2018. I didn't think he had a great Euros in 2016. And he started poorly here today. Yeah. So that, I think, would be troubling for Southgate when he goes back.
Yeah,
I agree that I don't see him being dropped
he's
in the next two games,
yeah.
but if he doesn't do it in the next two games, what are you going to do then? You're into the knockout stages then. Are you going to pick the best team, or are you just going to hope that Harry Kane can switch it back on?
I think if you've got your number 9 and your captain, I think he has to contribute even if he doesn't score. I think that's always a big, what Liam just said with the great centre forwards. They always give you something. Even if they don't score, they create a chance, they hold the ball up, they flick it on. Today he didn't do anything, and I think that's always the question with Kane when you talk about him being world-class or not world-class, that he's a fantastic goal scorer, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, but when he doesn't score, does he give the team enough in terms of linking play up, bringing others into play? Because he's there to create space for others. You know, when is Foden good? When is Sterling good?
He can do it, did he?
Yeah,
he can do it. If I can come in there, at the start of the season with
Spurs,
with Mourinho, he was dropping deep, picking up the ball, and some of the passes he made to Son were absolutely brilliant. You know, he can do it. But I just looked at him today and I thought, he looked tired, he looked laboured.
Yeah, but you talked about the other two tournaments where you saw he was, even though he got top scorer, he's got 3 or 4 penalties. You know, you've got to do it. If you want to be regarded as one of the best centre forwards in the world, you've got to do it here. You've got to do it in a major tournament, because here you play against the best players in Europe.
Yeah, but he had the most assists in the Premier League this year.
Yeah, which is fair enough. But the question is, at the highest level, does he do it often enough? Has he had the impact in the Champions League? I don't think he did. Has he got the impact in major tournaments? I don't think he's had. And the Premier League is a different competition. Yes, of course, it's hard to score goals in the Premier League. But on today's performance, you've got to say it is a worry, because
we've put some clips together.
Yeah,
but we're not being unfair to him, because if he had done something really good,
we'd have shown that.
We'd have shown it,
of
or
course,
we'd have to show it to balance things. But he didn't do anything.
No, and we're going to have a look at Harry Kane's the issues that he had during the game. And first of all, he found it difficult to hold the ball up when he got in possession.
Well, he gets dispossessed too easily. He's slow there. He doesn't realise who's around him. You know. And that was the story of his game, really. You watch this, he gets turned on this poor ball. You know, that's not like Harry Kane. That's not like Harry Kane at Spurs. It's been a long, hard season for a lot of these players. He, again, in possession, doesn't find anybody, gives it back to Croatia. This is a chance for him. Now, if he's at his sharpest, I think he scores there.
Yeah.
I think the sharp Harry Kane puts that ball in the net. And that's what I'd be worried about. But it's only you might think I'm nitpicking, and he will have time to prove himself, or he will have time to improve against Scotland in the next match. But I'm just saying, when they're having a cup of tea back at the hotel, it'd be a concern.
It'll be a concern. Has it anything to do, Liam, with the fact that Harry Kane is expected to play, unless he's injured, he's expected to play and last every single game for Tottenham, that he has to play probably a lot more football than an awful lot of other top players at top clubs, because they rotate other players, but Tottenham were so reliant on Harry Kane. He was the first name on the team sheet every week.
Yes, that is the case. And he also had a couple of knocks where he was injured, during the season. And also, let's not forget that he's up for sale now. He wants to leave Tottenham Hotspur, and all the clubs are looking at him. And I'm sure Daniel Levy will want his pound of flesh for Harry Kane because of his goal-scoring ability. So you're looking at 150 million maybe plus for Harry Kane. Would you give 150 million for him, looking at that today?
If I had it, I could think of other things I'd spend it on.
Well, it could be also the pressure on the player himself. Being in this position. It's all very well saying, I want to leave Tottenham, but where are you going?
Yeah. I mean, there aren't many options for a player of that calibre and a player at that price, Didi, and he is in the shop window. It's clear now he does want away from Spurs. So does that add a little bit of pressure onto his European Championships?
Yeah, I think that might be the reason. If you want to leave the club, he would have spoken, his agent would have spoken to 2, 3, 4, 5 clubs. He will know what the situation is, how much Spurs want, how much they're willing to pay. And obviously you want to show these teams that the extra 10, 20 million Spurs may want or Levy may want, you know, they spend it on a good player, and maybe this is one of the reasons. You know, it can, if you're not free mentally, if you're not settled, it can affect you, because that's the most important thing. If the head is not happy, you won't perform, and maybe that's one of the reasons. Because there were a couple of things in the first half where you get caught in possession. You know, it's all about awareness, and this is one of his strengths. He's not the quickest, but in and around the box, he's always aware. He knows where the opposition is, and very rarely he gets caught in possession. You know, usually that's a strength of his game. But here, a couple of times, he's in the middle of the park. He doesn't even know the guys behind him, and he gets dispossessed. And I don't think it's fatigue, because if you look at the City players, if you look at the Chelsea players, I think they played an awful lot more football than Harry Kane did.
Yeah, of course, they had more European football, haven't they?
Exactly. So if there is a reason, or if we
a lot of pressure on him, Didi. So much depends on everybody's looking for him to score the 5 or 6 goals that might bring England to the final, or might bring them the trophy. So there is a lot of pressure on him. Added on top of that is, where am I going to be playing next season?
Yeah, because
not easy for him.
He did say he wanted it sorted before the European Championships begun, and that hasn't happened, Liam.
Well, it's probably because Daniel Levy wants 180 million, and everybody's saying, "Well, thanks, but no thanks." You know.
How costly?
And the other thing is, you know, he could have had a call of his agent or his dad yesterday or 2 days ago, where he said to him, "Listen, Levy wants 150 or 180, 200 million, and it may not happen." You know, these are things that can happen to players during the tournament. And of course it affects him. It's on his mind, because he wants to go, because he wants to win trophies at some stage. As it looks at the moment, he won't win trophies at Spurs. And maybe he had somebody told him, or he's heard what Levy wants for him, and he said, no, unless they pay that, you know, you won't go. And this is, I think it can unsettle him. And clearly there must be some issue. As I said, I don't think it's fatigue. I think it's maybe the doubt about his future, where he's going to play next season, which might be playing on his mind, because this was very unlike Harry Kane today.
I think we're probably the few people that will bring this into the discussion arena.
Yeah.
I think in England they'll be saying, great start.
Yeah.
Harry was a little bit off today, but he'll come good.
Yeah, well, we've dealt with a lot of the positives, but this is something that's very real, because if he's undroppable and he doesn't find form, that could be extraordinarily costly for England in terms of their aspirations to win these European Championships.
That's why, you know, it's called a hot seat when you're sitting where Gareth Southgate is sitting. It is a hot seat, you know. And you've got someone like Calvert-Lewin. Now, he's nowhere near the goal scorer of the capability that Harry Kane is, but he's fast, he's strong, he's quick, bring other people into it. If Kane doesn't do it in the next 2 games, I think it will come to the top of the debate how England are going to go going forward. If he doesn't do it in the next 2 games, I think he has to score against Scotland. I think he has to score against the Czech Republic.
It's what people would expect, isn't it?
Well, I think you can be 100% certain, if it hasn't happened in the last few days, that tonight or tomorrow, the manager will take him to the side and say, Harry, what's going on? Is there anything I need to know? Is there anything you want to talk about? 100%. Because as a manager, you know, and this is, I think, Southgate's biggest strength, his connection with the players.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he probably would have spoke to him in the days leading up what the situation is, because it can affect the player, especially if you want to leave. And, you know, it's no foregone conclusion he's got to leave. He's going to leave, because if Levy says, I want 200 million, I don't think anybody in this climate is going to cop that. So he will speak to him either tonight or tomorrow and say, Harry, what's going on? You know, do you want to talk what is the situation? Because this is obviously, as you just said, it will affect England's chances hugely, because you need a goal scorer. We've seen Lukaku yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, half a chance, bang, he scores. This is what Kane is capable of, and if he doesn't do it, it'll seriously harm England's chances to go deep.
To be fair, they didn't make him any chances apart from the one where he's nearly got to it on the far post. But what was worrying for me is how lethargic he was, how sluggish he was. They didn't make any chances for him, so you can't really blame him for not scoring.
Yeah.
However, it was his general play that would be a worry for me, Peter.
OK, well, finally to sum up, because we have another match to look forward to very shortly, Austria against North Macedonia. But to sum up this afternoon, of the favoured teams, we've seen Belgium, we've seen Italy, and now we've seen England. Of those 3 so far, Liam, who has impressed you most?
I think all 3 have been impressive. I think England had the hardest game of all. I thought the Turkish team were very, very poor. I thought Russia were very, very poor. So both Belgium and Italy won comfortably.
Yeah, yeah.
I think England had a real hard game today and they handled it well. So I would put them all on a level. All on a level. I think the Italians looked slick, but then again, what were they up against? You know, so I think you've got to weigh everything up like that. But all three will be very pleased with how they've started the tournament.
Yeah, Did your assessment of what you've seen from, we'll say, those three so far?
Yeah, I think they've all been impressive. I think Turkey made Italy look like world beaters. I think the jury's still out how good they are. To go 28 games unbeaten is a mean feat. You know, it's no easy thing to do. So I think you've got to take them seriously. But I'd still question whether they're, you know, part of that top group of 3 or 4 teams. Belgium, I think, is one of the favourites. They were impressive. And I've got to say, I was taken by England today. It's a tough game, and the way they handled that passage of play for half an hour in the first half and 15-20 minutes in the second half, where Croatia dominated the game on a warm day. You know, they didn't panic, they stayed calm, they kept playing their game. I think they've got to improve a little bit, or they've got to improve in possession, especially after going 1-0 up. I think if you invite pressure, if you give the ball back to the opposition, I think you ask for trouble. But I've got to say, for the first performance, some outstanding performances. I was probably most taken by England's performance, I've got to say, out of the 3.
Okay.